Okay, am I good to start? Great. Hi there, everyone. How are you doing? I'm Ben Ward. I'm Field CTO, UK and I at Liquid. And today I'm going to talk to you about the importance and the urgency of application patching. I've just noticed there's a spelling mistake on the title of my slide, so please ignore that. The rest of the presentation is going to be really, really good. So it's going to be a mixture of slides and videos today, and we're going to talk about the importance of application packaging. So, application patching. So, when it comes to delivering applications these days in 2023, realistically, there's a really big set of challenges. Okay, and a lot of what I talk about to customers, to partners, to other vendors, etc., is the fact that when it comes to deploying updates, when it comes to deploying payload, security payloads, configurations, etc., to Windows and Mac OS, I would argue as an industry we've pretty much got that covered. Okay, we know how to do that stuff these days, but the big problem is around applications, and especially third-party non-Microsoft applications, and the challenges are around deploying applications, they're around updating applications, and they're around access. Now, today we're not going to talk massively around deployment and access, even though we'll show you what the Liquid platform looks like. We are going to be focusing on application updates and application lifecycle management. So there is sort of a traditional way of doing things when it comes to applications, and you might well recognize what this is and what this looks like. And I call this sort of the old endpoint problem, and it sort of looks like this. So you may well have had, or you may well still have, a PC sitting in an office on the corporate LAN, and most people know what they're doing when it comes to sort of individual devices. So deploying the applications to those devices, and most organizations, they have this and they have this scaled up. So it may well be that you're using SECM or group policy or MECM to deploy applications to big groups of devices that sit in an office on the corporate LAN, and you know what you're doing when it comes to application updates as well, application lifecycle management. This is something we've been doing for a long, long time. We know how to do this stuff. But the thing is, this sort of model, it seems to be quite old-fashioned these days. This isn't sort of the way that you do this. And I know when it comes to sort of universities, when it comes to schools, a way of updating the applications may well be to get a USB key with applications on, and then simply put those USB keys in the machines to keep them up to date. But the world now in 2023 looks different. It sort of looks a lot more like this. And you may well recognize what this looks like. A lot of your endpoints now may well be laptops. And it's not just laptops in an office. These will be laptops that could be globally distributed. So keeping applications, one, deployed, and two, up to date on these devices can be very, very difficult. And it's no longer the case that these devices sit on the corporate LAN. It's no longer the case that these devices may well be plugged in to a network. They could well be on Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi connections, Wi-Fi networks, either at home or in a coffee shop or somewhere else. You no longer own the networks that these devices connect into. So being able to deploy applications and keep those applications up to date can be incredibly tricky. But it's incredibly important to keep applications up to date. So what I'm going to do now is focus on a particular application, an incredibly popular one, and the number of patches and updates that application may well need to keep it, up to date from a user perspective and a feature perspective and a function perspective, but also from a security perspective. Now, Chrome is one of the most used applications in the world. It's still the biggest browser out there, but I'm going to use Chrome as an example of applications and the importance of application updates. So I did a bit of research on Chrome, and I looked at the most recent vulnerabilities and exploits that have been reported as critical vulnerabilities. And these are the ones that I found. Okay, well, in fact, these are just 7 of the 14 most recent critical vulnerabilities that I found for Chrome. And you can see here I've color coded them. So we've got green for lowest risk, we've got orange or amber for medium risk, and then we've got red for a high risk vulnerability. Now, these 7 or 14 as it was in total were just from 7 days. Okay. And if I went back 14 days for Chrome, there were even more vulnerabilities, and there was a critical risk vulnerability. So if you think over a period of 7 days, there were 14 vulnerabilities discovered for Chrome. And if you multiply that by the number of applications that most organizations have, and no matter the size of the organization, they could you could have 400 applications. We have one customer with over 6,000 applications. So if you think about how difficult it can be to keep those applications up to date, especially with the huge volume of vulnerabilities that are coming out daily, it can be almost impossible to keep up to date with the applications and the vulnerabilities. So what I want to do here, bearing in mind we had like 14 critical vulnerabilities reported, and there'll be some that aren't reported, by the way, I want to focus on this critical vulnerability here, the one in red. So CVE 2023-5346. So this vulnerability, interestingly, this vulnerability, interestingly, has been given an 8.8 score, which is high. Okay, and the description for this, and I don't quite know what this means. I'm not a specialist when it comes to Chrome, but type confusion in V8 and Google Chrome prior to version 1.17 allowed a remote attacker to potentially exploit heap corruption via crafted HTML page. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it is a critical vulnerability. Now, when this was reported, you'd expect there to be a period of time between this particular vulnerability being reported and then it being patched. So let's have a look at the CVE record for this particular vulnerability, 5346. And you can see down the bottom left-hand corner there, date record created. 2023-10-03, so the 3rd of October 2023. And there's a bit more information there. There's a lot of information you can go into to find out more about this vulnerability. But when do you think it was patched? This is where it starts to get really interesting. So if you have a look at the Google security update, the patch for this particular vulnerability, then actually it was patched on the 3rd of October. So a patch was made available as soon as a record was created for this particular exploit. Now, this exploit was first reported about a week or so before the critical vulnerability information was created. But you would have been aware, if you've been following the CVE database and having a look at critical vulnerabilities against particular applications, you would have been aware of that vulnerability and then a patch being created for that vulnerability on the same day. Now, there are very few organizations out there who have the ability to track critical vulnerabilities, to understand that there's a patch for that vulnerability, and then to deploy that patch. That is quite a difficult thing to do. You could well have a whole stack of applications out there that have vulnerabilities against them, that may have patches ready to go. You just don't know about them. Now, in the UK, we have something called the Cyber Essentials Plus certification, and this is a government standard for security. Now, in Cyber Essentials, if you're in the public sector, or if you want to work with the public sector or sell into the public sector, then you need to have Cyber Essentials Plus certification. So two of the things that mandates, I'll just read through this very quickly. All applications must be updated, including applying any manual configuration changes required to make the update effective. Within 14 days, and this is a critical one here, within 14 days of an update being released, where the update fixes vulnerabilities described by the vendor as critical or high risk, and the update addresses vulnerabilities with a CVSSV3 score of 7 or above. So that critical vulnerability we found in Chrome, that has to be from a UK government and Cyber Essentials Plus standard. And by the way, this standard is starting to be adopted right across the world within 14 days. And it's very difficult for most organizations to be able to do that within 14 days. What I'm going to show you is what the Liquid platform can do, okay? Because this is a platform that gives you the ability for a massive chunk of applications to be able to update them and get around these vulnerabilities very, very quickly. And I'm going to show you a couple of videos that sort of go into that in a bit of detail. But first off, what is the Liquid platform? Well, it's an application deployment and lifecycle management platform for Windows and Mac OS. So we can deliver pretty much any type of application that you want to have delivered to Windows or Mac OS endpoints, to those two different platforms. And if it's MSI or MSIX, if it's an XE, if it's a Mac app, if it's a script, it could be something like a Liquidware Flex app, it could be a Numescent cloud paging app, whatever that application type is, you can deliver it to those endpoints, to Windows, or if it's a Mac app, to Mac. And as well as that, we have, and this is pretty much part of our secret sauce, we have an app store between 3,000 and 4,000 applications that we are keeping up to date all the time. We call that the Liquid Setup Store. Now, you still need to have licenses for these applications, but we've done all the hard work around automating those applications, around automating the install and keeping those applications up to date. And as soon as a software vendor, an ISV, releases an update for their application, we will put it into our Liquid Setup Store and we will make it available for you to deploy. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Now, when it comes to applications right across your estate, Liquid can become the single source of truth for all of those applications. Oh, not quite sure what happened there. I seem to have lost all of my PowerPoint. Give me 1 second and I will bring that back up for you. There we go. So let me just restore this, go back here. Perfect. Right, let me just stop sharing for a second. Great. So let me just share my screen again, and then I will show you. Believe me, it's worth the wait. There we go, share screen. And just out of interest, PowerPoint has never crashed on me like that before. So here you go. Great, we're back. Fantastic. Hopefully everyone can still see me. I'll wait for Justin just to confirm that. But if you can, I will carry on. So Liquid can become the single source of truth of all of your applications in your estate, whatever that is. So we can deploy applications to your VDI platform. We can deploy applications to your virtual desktop platform. We can deploy applications via published apps if you're using Citrix, or if you're using Horizon, or if you're using AVD, or if you're using Windows 365 or any of the other VDI technologies out there. And we can also deploy applications to your Windows devices. It's we have the ability to be the single source of truth for all of your applications in the enterprise. So I want to show you sort of some of the capabilities that we have around this as well when it comes to updates. So if there is an update to an application, we can push out that update to pretty much everything you have. So if it's an update to PowerPoint, and Microsoft has updated PowerPoint, then we can take that update, we'll put it into our store automatically, then we will automatically update PowerPoint across all of your different delivery platforms. So let's have a look at what the platform looks like, and hopefully this video comes across okay to you on this platform. So what you can see in front of you now is Windows 11, okay, and this is Windows 11, and this is the Liquid launcher that you can see. You can see the big red demo bar. So as an end user, I can simply go in, and by the way, this is completely Azure AD integrated. As an end user, I can go in and I can select, in this case, the Office applications. I'll select Excel and PowerPoint and Word and Outlook. What will then happen is the first time I click on those applications in my workspace, they will start to install and then they will launch. So you can see I've got the shortcuts on my desktop. So those applications are there. And from a security perspective, I'm going to show you some of the smart icon capabilities that we've got in the platform. So the first time the user clicks on Word, it will install Word silently, and then it will launch Word for that user to be able to access. So we can actually change what's being launched dynamically. But you can see there we've got Word, it's signed the user in, and we're good to go. You could have multiple platforms. You could have Windows and Mac. In that case, the look and feel will be exactly the same. So the same user, in this case Ben, I'm logged in as Ben across both of these different platforms, Windows and Mac. I can go in and I can select and subscribe to applications, and the same applications will follow me for Windows and for Mac. So I can go in and grab the same applications. I can grab Excel and PowerPoint. I can grab Word, and I can grab Teams and Outlook, and all of those applications will appear on my desktop. So you can see here, this should very soon appear on Mac. There we go. And the same applications will appear on Windows. It's an application estate that will follow me around, and that gives me the ability to deploy applications and have a very similar experience across both of those different platforms. And very soon I'll get to show you what this actually looks like from an application update perspective. But the application deployment is centrally controlled, which is a great security play. And the ability to consume those applications is also centrally made available. Now, when it comes to what to do when somebody clicks on the application, that's where we have an automation capability here. And we can actually take the context of what the user is doing. We know what network they're on. We know their device. We know the user. We can pull back a whole lot of different information about the user's context. And based on that, we can make decisions. So we could say, well, actually, when the user clicks on Excel, when they're not in the office, when they're in a coffee shop, what we want to happen is we want a URL to launch instead. We want it to go to office.com and then launch Excel in a URL. Or it could be potentially that you want to have a virtual application run instead of the local application. And all of this can be done based on your particular security constraints and your constraints and your security requirements. So now I've done that. Now I've put Open URL as the top part of the list. I can then take this across our 4-stage pipeline and drop it into production. And that will take effect straight away. So if I go back as the end user here, and if I click on Workspace, and now if I click on Excel, what will happen is instead of launching Excel locally, it will launch it in the browser. And you can see there what we're doing. We're actually kicking off a shell API call to the platform to query what the next step is. So every time the user clicks on the icon, we control what happens with launch with that particular application. So here you go, they've clicked on Excel. This time, because of filters, because of constraints, what it will do is it will launch it in the browser. But this could quite easily also be a virtual application. And again, this has got a lot of security capabilities around it. We can detect whether or not the application is the right version, potentially. So if I go back in here, and then show you what this looks like with Excel, and I'll show you what sort of filters you can put in place. So if we go to Horizon, we drop that to the top, and this time when a user clicks on Horizon, it will hopefully launch Horizon instead of launching the local application. And then, again, from a security perspective, this is really powerful because that application will be launching in the data center rather than launching on the endpoint device. But we can change this and we can choose what that automation is going to look like. So there's pretty much nothing we can't do here when it comes to deciding how the application is going to launch. And this is on Mac. Users clicked on Excel, and then it's going to launch a Horizon session, so virtual application session, and then launch Excel as a virtual application. There's no multiple shortcuts here that the user needs to choose from. It will do all of this automatically based on the security context of the end user and of the device. And we can get very, very granular with this if we need to. We can go in and we can choose filters, and then we can put in different contexts. It could be the version of the operating system. It could be the patch level of the operating system. It could be whether or not a certificate exists, or if an antivirus tool is running on that endpoint. And based on all of that, we will then decide what the next best step is going to be. There's no need for manual intervention. There's no need for admins to get involved with this. We can just choose what's going to happen next based on these different constraints. So this platform is very much an automation platform that's very much focused on application delivery and securing those applications and making sure the right version of the application is delivered to the end user. And you can see here some of the different contexts, some of the different filters we can put in place. And we can get incredibly granular with this if we want to. And you can see here particular service running on the endpoint. We can also choose different browsers. So if it's a browser-based application, which browser do you actually want to have launch when a user clicks on that particular application? So that's what our automation capability looks like. We also have that app store that I talked about earlier. And this is where those application updates and the ability to patch those different vulnerabilities comes from. And I'm going to show you that in a bit more detail shortly. But from an application perspective, we have this app store with thousands of applications in it. And again, as I said earlier, we have done a lot of the hard work for these applications. We take these applications from the vendor and we are updating these on a daily basis. So if I was to show you the latest application deployments, then today, I mean, it's the 25th today, from today you would see probably a whole page worth of updates for various applications that have been updated just today. You'd see yesterday's. As soon as these application updates are made available, we will show you what these look like. I mean, as an example here, Teams. I could go into Teams. I could choose to push the Teams package directly into production or to acceptance testing. Here you can see there's no critical vulnerabilities against this application. This is something I'm going to show you a little bit more detail shortly. But you can take that application, you can then assign it to a certain group of users. And again, this is completely Azure AD integrated. So as you go in there, you can choose these different applications. You can create the shortcuts the user needs to have. You can decide whether or not that goes into the catalog or into the workspace, or if it's a forced application. Then when you've clicked finish with this, it will grab the application from the Liquid Setup Store, then put it into your local zone. And when it's in your zone, you have the ability to deliver this application out to your end users. And it's very, very straightforward. So if I show you what that looks like now, go to Actions. We can make any updates there that we need to make. We can add a new action set. And once that's done, we can just drag it into production if we've made any changes, and then that becomes available for that user. So here we go. There's Teams. I click on Get. Then Teams should appear on my desktop There we go. So if I click on that, it will appear on my desktop and it will start installing. And then when it's installed, it will launch for me. It's as easy as that. Now, another key piece of this is the updates piece. So we make it very easy to update these applications too. So if I go back to Liquid Setup Store and click on updates, you'll see a list, I'll show you a bigger list shortly, of the applications that are available to be updated. And you can see here we've got definition updates for Microsoft Defender. No critical vulnerabilities against that, which is great. I'll click next. I can then simply click finish and then have those updates pushed out to, in this case, those Windows devices for those definition updates. It's as simple as that. That's how we can apply those updates. But we have a number of really innovative ways of doing that, especially when it comes to critical vulnerabilities. And I'm going to show you that next. So if I just skip past, this is what it generally looks like. So let's say you have Teams, and Teams isn't the best example, I'll be honest. But let's say you have Teams in the environment and you want to be able to push those updates out, then it would look something like this. We would inform you that Teams has an update because it's in the Liquid Setup Store. You can then decide to automatically push that update out to Teams wherever it's installed across the estate. Now, if you have a custom application that we don't have in the store, again, Chrome is probably a bad example because we do have that in the store, then you can update particular packages for that custom application, and then you can deploy those updates to production as well through the same delivery mechanism we have with Liquid. And this is sort of a high level of what that actually looks like. So Liquid Setup Store, the app is updated by the vendor. We then put the update into Liquid Setup Store. We notify you, or we can automatically deploy those updates. And again, I'm going to show you what this looks like. So this is what the update and the critical vulnerability capability of the Liquid platform looks like. So if I go here, so this is the admin console you saw earlier. Apologies if that's a bit small. But if I go into the Liquid Setup Store connector here, and again, if I click on resources, then you'll see all the different pages of resources that we've got available here. You can see Adobe Reader, you can see Acrobat, you can see pages and pages of different applications that we can select from here. What I'm going to do is use the example that we were using earlier. I'm going to use Chrome. So if I go in and then I can simply search for a particular application in here. If I go up to the search bar and then click on Chrome, then you can see I've got Chrome for Business. I'm going to click on that, so 64-bit. If I click next, you can see there's a critical vulnerability listed here. And apologies, that's a little bit blurry, but you can see there's a critical vulnerability. We also do a virus check. So we will check to see if there's any malware in these packages too, and sometimes there is. We will flag that up to you, but we won't stop you from grabbing the application. We will make you aware. So you can simply drill down on that, and then you can click on any of these different links to get more information about the particular critical vulnerability that's in this package. So I've clicked on that, but that'll open in a different page. So what I can do next is I can go through the same process I showed you earlier. I can click next, then have that deployed. Now, let's say that I want to apply some of these updates, and I've got multiple different ways of doing it. Like you saw earlier, I can click on updates. I can then choose some of these, like in this case, VirtualBox, really good example actually, because that has a lot of critical vulnerabilities, even against the update from the vendor, and that does happen. You can see we've got at least 3 critical vulnerabilities there for this particular application. But I can, and this is for the update. So even though this is an updated version of the application, you saw how quickly with Chrome those different critical vulnerabilities can be listed. There are CVEs against this update. But we would hope at some point VirtualBox release a version that doesn't have critical vulnerabilities listed. So in that case, I can assign or manually get those updates assigned. I'm going to show you how to do that automatically. In this case, I've got a connector that connects to the Liquid Setup Store, but only has that one application, which is Adobe. So what I have here is the ability to create a synchronization task. You can see here what it does is it connects to the connector, and it downloads and applies updates. So that is using the connector, Liquid Setup Store, with that one application. It automatically connects, and it will automatically download and apply updates every time it connects. The next thing we're going to do is set up notifications. So I can set up email notifications to send that to an admin, and I can also create a schedule. You can see here I've got a 1-hour schedule. So every hour, what is going to happen is automatically the platform is going to connect to the Liquid Setup Store. It's going to connect to Adobe, that particular application, and it's going to check to see if there's any updates. If there are any updates against Adobe, it will then download those, and it will automatically deploy those updates to users in the organization who are using that application. Now, this is very useful for certain applications where you need to make sure you have patches or you have those vulnerabilities patched pretty much straight away. You're not going to want to do that for most of your applications. Most of them, you'll just want to have a notification setting put on there so that if there is an update, it will check, then it will notify you that there's an update for the application. And you can also decide which stage of the pipeline those application updates will go into. Most of the time, you'll want that to go into acceptance testing. Then once you're happy that that application has gone into acceptance testing or that update has gone into acceptance testing, you can simply move it into production, then have the latest version delivered out to all of those endpoints. This is pretty much the only way of automating updates across a massive amount of applications. And as I called out, we have between 3,000 and 4,000 applications in the Liquid Setup Store. So one last piece I want to talk to you about, and this is something that I showed you a little bit earlier on. This is our smart icon technology, and this is where you change the shortcut to do what you want it to do. And again, this is really, really critical when it comes to applications, when it comes to security of those applications. And this is the ability to be able to change what is happening with each of these shortcuts depending on the context of the end user. And a really good example of this would be a laptop. So potentially a laptop that is a corporately owned laptop and it's in the office on the corporate network. Now, if you take that laptop and take it to a coffee shop, then based on that context, you can get it to automatically deliver either a URL or maybe a Citrix published version of the application. So user clicks on the shortcut in the office, they get their local version of PowerPoint, it launches, they've got all of their data locally on the laptop. They take that laptop outside of that trusted network, and then they click on PowerPoint, and automatically and completely transparently to the end user, what will happen is potentially it will launch a Citrix published session instead, or a Horizon published session, or a Windows 365 virtual desktop that then launches PowerPoint. You have a lot of capability around this, and we call this smart icon technology. So the absolute last piece I want to show you is how this would work with the likes of Intune. I'm only going to cover Intune. I have other pieces around VMware Workspace ONE as well, but Intune generally, in Europe anyway, seems to be the biggest growing UEM capability. We can absolutely work with Intune for deploying applications. As I said, as an industry, we seem to have fixed deploying updates and security packages to Windows. It's the application piece that gets left behind. But you can use Intune and Liquid on top of that to take care of all of your application deployment requirements, plus the ability to patch those applications with critical vulnerabilities. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. And I suppose here is where we have 5 minutes or so for questions. So do we have any questions? I'm checking the Q&A box, and I can't see any questions on there. So I don't know if Justin or anyone else has reported any questions, or if anybody wants to ask any. I'll give it a couple of minutes. Don't be scared. And if you'd like to scan that QR code, then please go ahead. And what that will do is it will bring up a form you can fill in to ask for a demo. Okay, well, if there are no questions, I will end the session there then. Great stuff. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Take care. Any questions, then ask the team. But thank you very much.